Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Welcome to Vegas. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to learn a lot about computer science. I have the pleasure of introducing three colleagues who I've gotten to know very, very well over the last 5 to 6 months. TeachAI is an initiative that is led by Code.org, ETS, ISTE, Khan Academy, and the World Economic Forum. And today, we're going to have leaders from ETS, ISTE, and Khan Academy speak on this panel with me today. Unfortunately, our friends at the World Economic Forum chose to stay in Switzerland. Imagine that. But with that, I'd like to introduce these three. Kristen DeSerbo, the Chief Learning Officer of Khan Academy, come on up. Narmeen Makani, Head of AI Labs at ETS. And Joseph South, Chief Innovation Officer of ISTE/ASCD. Okay, so if you've ever seen me do a panel, you know that I like to keep it lively, and I've warned these folks that I might go off script. So they are warned. Also, I like to engage you all as quickly as possible. So rather than save the Q&A from the audience for the last 5 minutes, we're actually going to pause midway through and get to your questions. And I believe there are either mic stands out there in the darkness, or there are mic runners. Are there mic stands or mic runners? All right, excellent. And so please get ready with your questions. We're going to start off with a fun question. If you all could just, again, introduce yourself, name, title, org, and then answer one of these three questions. What is one thing AI has done for you recently? Or what is one thing you hope AI can or will do for you? Or what's one thing you think AI will never be able to do? And we'll start off with Kristen.
Hello. Thanks all for being here today. I'm really looking forward to this panel and meeting more of you. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at Khan Academy, as we said, and I've been working in educational technology for, 20 years now, and AI has given me and us at Khan Academy the ability to create a tutor that we have never been able to do before with technology, to be able to have a dialogue with students. And we think that that's going to significantly improve learning outcomes for students. So that's really exciting for us. And not to plug Conmigo, but that's been what I've been sleeping and dreaming. We just realized it really was just about a year ago that we launched the idea for Conmigo at a Hack Week internally, and it's Hack Week at Khan Academy this week. So it's been an exciting year, and so it's an exciting time with AI.
Thank you for joining us, Kristen. Narmeen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Narmeen. I head AI at ETS. I have a 9-year-old, and she's learning Tamil, the language, and I don't read or write Tamil. So I wasn't able to support her because my husband travels. But with AI, I use it to, show me the Tamil script in English so that I can help her work. I don't think that would have been possible without AI.
Thank you, Narmeen. Joseph.
Hi, it's wonderful to be in a room with educators. I feel the energy just flowing from you. It sort of supercharges me to be with you. I'm Joseph South. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at ISTE. And the thing that I really, really want AI to do is fold my laundry.
Me too. Me too, Joseph. And get me a beer. So this is a question for all of you. Superintendent Ebert mentioned this AI Guidance for Schools toolkit that was led by the steering committee at TeachAI, Khan Academy, ISTE, ETS, and the World Economic Forum, as well as some co-authors who are part of the advisory committee. Actually, there are many TeachAI advisory committee members here at CSEdCon this year. but 5 co-authors led the development of the toolkit as well. COSIN, the Consortium for School Networking, Digital Promise, PACE, which is Policy Analysis for California Education, and the European EdTech Alliance. This Guidance for Schools toolkit, actually the 4-pager is in your Padfolio, so if you haven't seen it, check it out, please. And there's a full toolkit available on the website in Google Doc form as well as web page form. We released this toolkit 2 weeks ago, and today, we released that special mini guide. What is one thing you hope AI can do for education, and what guidance will make that likely? And anyone can begin.
Everybody's looking at me. So what I hope, one thing that I hope it will do, and I have a list, but one thing I hope is that it will jumpstart a long overdue conversation about assessment. We have gotten away with outmoded approaches to assessment for far too long.
Yep.
And if, the guidance that will help us is if we embrace AI as a tool to up-level our assessment rather than a threat to our assessments, then we can make a change towards more relevant, more authentic, more competency-based learning.
Thank you, Joseph.
So Joseph, I think that was my answer.
Sorry. Should have gone
Because I
first.
come from ETS. But yes, amen to what you said. Because, the future is going to be testless as we know it. But since you already said that, my hope with AI is that it will allow teachers and educators to offer a more individualized learning to all kinds of students, to students in every walk of life, that we don't have this digital divide anymore, and it'll accelerate that learning. And the guidance that, I would give to educators and all stakeholders really in the edtech space is to engage with the AI, to have these conversations, to not shy away or ignore, but really embrace the challenge in front of us.
I'll build on that. I think there's having teachers have more personalized conversations, but I think it's having teachers build those human relationships that are so important for student outcomes. And if they're spending less time on some of the more rote tasks, there's more time available to be able to have those conversations with students, to sit down with them over their work, but also just about their lives and what they're doing. And I think the things we need to do that is to start to be able to find out what can AI do for teachers and what can it do to help ease some of that burden.
All right, and actually, I'll add to this. I hope that we use this window of opportunity during this time where we're trying to figure out how to incorporate AI in education to examine things that actually aren't as technical as AI or even computer science, but to really examine things like societal bias and misinformation in a new way or in a revitalized way, because obviously we see the consequences of students who grow up into adults who don't know how to critically evaluate information and who don't even understand that AI isn't biased. We are biased, and we're the ones, hopefully, who need to ultimately change, and then thus, hopefully, AI will reflect and mirror that change in us. So, I'm hoping for things even beyond the teaching of AI or teaching how to use AI. Joseph, as the Chief Innovation Officer for the International Society for Technology in Education.
Well done.
And ASCD. By the way, you know that they're going to have a new name at some point?
You can't put him on the spot.
I know.
here.
I'm not. I always ply him to get updates as to what their new name is going to be, because I'm so curious. An organization that's so well known, they're going to change their name, and I'm so curious what that name's going to be. Yeah.
Well, one that our naming consultants came up with was Tangelo, but we went back to the drawing board.
Yeah, you fired them, and then you. Yeah. Okay. That wasn't the question, though. Now the real question, Joseph. Joseph, what's different about this wave of AI hitting schools and the world, but let's just focus on schools. What's different about this, about AI, compared to other EdTech waves previous? And what have we learned from those previous waves that can help us now?
So there's, I think, a couple things that are different that I think are probably pretty apparent to anyone in this room. The first of all is the speed of adoption. It's been adopted so quickly. There is a recent survey that 35% of educators in the UK are using AI to do work, doing their work. And you have to realize that, you know, generative AI pretty much became in the public consciousness in November of last year. It hasn't even been a year. That is a massive, rapid adoption. And there's a couple reasons for that, I think. One is one that Bill Gates mentioned at the 10th anniversary of Code.org, which I had the privilege of attending. And that is that the infrastructure is already in place. For most new technologies, you first have to get the infrastructure in place, and it's incredibly expensive, and it takes a lot of technical ability, and then you can bring in the technology. We pretty much have the infrastructure. The second is that it's conversational. Anyone, not everyone, but most people who have the ability to type can access AI, generative AI. And so the speed is fast. The second thing that I would say that's different is that it's happening across all sectors of society at once. I'm going to pause and make a really important point, which is AI, that wave already came, right? AI is already here. It's already in every aspect of your life. It's in every nook and cranny. It's in every one of the apps on your phone. It's which groceries are showing on which shelves in your grocery store. It's already here. But generative AI is hitting us all at once. And so as a result, usually the policy conversation around new technologies comes to education last. But it's coming to us at the same time as it's coming to the rest of society. And as a result, we have federal, state, local leaders, international leaders, all focused in at the same time. And that is really different. Not to mention that the people who make the technology are requesting to be regulated, are requesting guardrails. So that's really different. As far as things that we can do or learn from previous waves, I think there's three things that I would mention. One is that we know it's going to be distributed inequitably. Every wave of technology has been distributed inequitably. And if we know that up front, we can start taking steps right now to mitigate that. And banning AI is actually one of the ways you can guarantee an equitable adoption of AI, because the people with means are going to have it anyway, and the people without will not. Second, the tech part's the easy part. The hard part is building the capacity of educators to use it effectively for teaching and learning. And I mean, we have a teacher shortage. We are coming out of COVID. We have the most diverse, differentiated student body we've ever had. And getting this on the radar of a teacher is tough. And having them be able to use it effectively, even harder. And then the last thing that I'll say is, I believe that the most potent use of new technologies is not when we do it to a student, but when a student becomes a creator with the new technology. Yeah, you like that? And that, we can learn from previous waves that if we really want the full impact of this technology, we need to put students in the seat of the creator.
Joseph will be here till tomorrow afternoon, so please seek him out. You can tell that he's a wealth of wisdom. And what I appreciate about Joseph, it's not just a bunch of talking points, though he has those. It's a lot of pragmatism as well, and a lot of just useful, practical knowledge. So please seek him out in the hallway. Sorry, Joseph, you're now going to be swamped. But I want them to profit from you being here as much as you being on the TeachAI steering committee. So thank you, Joseph. Narmeen, I have a question for you. Narmeen, I'm with a whole bunch of really educated people. We got Dr. DeCerbo, Dr. South, but Narmeen, I'm pretty sure you're the only AI scientist here, right? Kristen, you didn't? Okay, yes. Narmeen is the only AI scientist here. So Narmeen, AI, I think it's quite powerful, though he can't fold Joseph's laundry, can't get me a beer yet. Narmeen, AI is quite powerful right now. What's the future of AI, short and longer term? Give us, gaze into that crystal ball. Let us know what else we might expect. And obviously for this audience, how is that relevant for education?
I like to be an engineer, though. So if you asked me this question last week, Pat, I would have said that, most of the generative AI we're seeing is text-based, and multimodal would be the next, obvious frontier, except that OpenAI already released GPT-4V, so we're already there with the multimodal and being able to process images and PDFs, etc. I think in the short term, what we're going to see is that accumulation of knowledge as a repository. Knowledge was distributed. It is distributed. You have PDFs, you have SharePoints, you have Google Docs, you have stuff all over the place. And bringing that conversational piece into that knowledge repository and combining it with generative AI, I think we're going to see that very, very quickly happen. And that's going to impact education because now you can pretty much ask a question, whether it's within your domain, within your company, within your education environment, or more generic across the internet. In the slightly longer term, I see things like personalization combined with generative AI. So right now you see, your grocery list pre-populated, or your Netflix recommendation, your Spotify song list. Combining that with generative AI gets you the persona or the character you're most comfortable with. So think of applications in who do you want to talk to at different moments in your life, at different times of the day, or for different purposes. You might want a certain persona reminding you to take your medicines versus a different persona teaching you math, and a different persona bringing you a grocery list. A little longer than that, I see skills and competencies really taking off with this generative AI. I think we're almost there. Dr. Glenn, yesterday, he talked about education currently measuring the product and trying to move towards process. We've had the concept of performance tasks and situational judgment tasks in education for a long time, but they've been really, really difficult because of how resource intensive they are. With AI being able to have the data sets, have the knowledge, I think we're going to very quickly accelerate being able to combine that behavioral, the process data or the performance data, as well as your explicit response together to start making predictions around the durable skills. Can you think critically? Are you being empathetic in your conversation?
Can I jump on that quick?
Please.
So when I first met Joseph, he was in the US Department of Ed, and I was making games and trying to work on game-based assessment. And you may have noticed you don't have a ton of exciting game-based assessments in your classroom. And it turns...
Is that because of Joseph?
Sorry, I tried. I really did try.
It turns out that they were really expensive and difficult to make. And we would spend, 8 months building this game, and it would cover like a week of curriculum. And trying to figure out the process data from them and how we were going to pull them together was a monumental task. And I do think that this technology really leapfrogs us in a way that we're going to be able to do some much more understanding of that process that students are using and how they're having those conversations, and maybe get us where we wanted to get 10 years ago.
That'd be awesome.
So, Kristen, actually, the next question's for you. TeachAI, the initiative, is about empowering educators to teach with AI and about AI. How are these different? Where do they overlap? What do we need to teach about AI so we can teach with AI?
Yeah, so we and many others are creating these tools for students to use. The idea of a chatbot tutor, I think we're going to see ubiquitous in the next couple of months. But for students to really be able to use those effectively, they need to have some understanding of what's happening under the hood. So AI can be wrong. how do we help students understand that, understand when it's most likely to be wrong, what kinds of things it's most likely to be wrong about, and how they should be thinking critically about the responses they're getting from AI and what that might look like in the same way we try to teach them to think critically about the internet search results they get when they do a search. That's just one example of the idea that if we're going to be using AI to teach with, we need to help students understand what's happening with it in order to be able to be effective consumers of AI. And so I think you all are in the CS space, and I think could be leaders in your schools in terms of helping teachers think about building their own understanding about what's happening with AI, and then helping their students understand what's happening with these tools so that they're more effective and critical consumers.
So I actually have a personal anecdote relevant to what you just shared, Kristen. I got taught about how chatbots work and how large language models work from OpenAI's Chief Technology Officer. Her name is Mira Murati. It was through a video, so it wasn't personal, and so you all can be taught the same thing too. It's a video that we shot with her as well as Cristobal Valenzuela from Runway, another AI company. But after Mira explained how these chatbots and large language models work, it totally changed my ability to potentially use an AI tool as like a personal therapist, because I knew technically what it was doing. It was going to be hard for me now. I feel like it's going to be hard for me now. By the way, there's a lot of AI like characters out there, character.ai, that are providing informal advice in ways that they probably shouldn't, but they are. But for me, it's not going to work because I know what's happening under the hood. And I hope that all kids will be able to critically evaluate these apps because they understand what's actually happening under the hood. So I really agree with what you just shared. We're going to go to audience questions. And so I don't know, again, if there are mic runners or mic stands. If there are mic runners, please raise your hand. But if out of that, there are mic runners. Yes, there are mic runners. So there's some Code.org staff with mics in their hands raised up. So just raise your hand, and what I'd like you to do is briefly introduce yourself, name and affiliation, and then get straight to your question.
Kia ora, I'm Jeff Bentley from OMG Tech in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I have a question for Kirsten. Carnamigo has only been out, as you said, it's probably only, 6 months, 9 months?
Yeah, we released March 14th. So.
Is there anything that you can tell us in terms of evaluation about results and how the impact that it's been having for students and teachers?
Oh, you teed me up for what I was going to talk about in the next session that I'm in, but I'll give you a preview. So we have been learning a lot. There are some things that, so first of all, on Khan Academy, for those who aren't aware, the Khanmigo can act in a couple of different ways. One is what we call companion mode, where it's basically acting like a tutor. You're working on a problem on Khan Academy, often math problems, as that's what is our most used courses. And Khanmigo can be there and say, hey, I'm trying to solve this 2x plus 3 equals 5. I don't know what to do, and it acts as a tutor. There are also a number of other activities that we basically put out as a sandbox to try things out, including debate me, write a story with me, get feedback on my college admissions essay, a bunch of things that we've been just testing. What's sticking, what students like, what's helping them learn. So we have a few things that we've learned. In the spring, we had a couple of partner districts, including Newark, New Jersey, and Hobart in Indiana, who agreed to work with us to let us observe classes, interview teachers, interview school administrators about where things were. So what did we learn from all of this? First, we learned we have set up in the system some moderation. So if students are doing things with that indicate violence, threats of self-harm, sexual content, they raise a flag. That flag gets to teachers. We heard from district administrators, we want to see that too. And so the generalization from that is people are definitely concerned with safety and thinking about how do we know what students are doing when they're interacting with these models. So heard and understood, and we've done some new things to build that in. So that's the first piece, is concerns about safety. Second, students most liked and most used the companion mode, the, hey, help me solve this problem that I'm working on, and I want to talk to you about where this problem is. So that was the most used thing. We get lots of questions that I'll say we get, what's our error rate on math? So when you get an answer from Conmigo, you can give a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can write us feedback about what you worked or didn't work there. I will say, get about a 2% rate of people saying that it made a mistake and what that looks like, so it's interesting. And then in our comparisons, this is not a randomized control trial. This is not anything where we had much control over who had it and who didn't, but we were able to have some schools in the districts that were using it and some schools that were not. And we were able to see that the students who were using it got more, this is going to take, again, more discussion. We have an internal metric called skills to proficient, because on Khan Academy, you can work from attempted to familiar to proficient to mastered on a skill. And so we count as an internal metric of learning how many skills students get to proficient, because that is the level that tells us they're most likely to see improvements on external assessments. And so we saw the big positive thing for us was we saw students using Conmigo got more skills to proficient than students who didn't use it. Now here is my request. In order to really understand how well this is working, we need partners in schools that are willing to share their external assessment data with us in a way that helps us link it to students who are using and not using Conmigo, and maybe even letting us do some random assignment by classes of who gets it and who doesn't. And that's, from our perspective, sometimes hard to find schools that are willing to do that, but everyone wants to know if it works or not. So if you want to know if it works or not, think about how you can help us get that evidence. That's my pitch.
Thank you, Kristen. And Kristen will be here till the end of the day. So if you're gonna holler at her and say, hey, we're game for sharing our data, that's the time. We have other questions out there? Yes. Do you have a mic?
Testing. There
Yes.
we go. My question, realizing that I'm new to the whole AI large language model, is about the biases. When I first heard about it, that my mind immediately went to the bias question, because you only get out what people put in. And so I'm not sure that what is in there is representative of the culture within the world. And so I wonder if you could address that a little bit more about how you see it as not being biased when I went directly to the biases.
Well, I can quickly start by, and then I'll pass it to whoever wants to jump in, but because it relates to something I said earlier, these models reflect societal bias. That's what they do. In fact, I don't know if you know, but the way these generative AI models work is, the way machine learning works is through bias. But bias in the sense that you throw a lot of data at it and it learns to make inferences about other things. That's a form of bias. What we're talking about here is our bias as humans in this room. Both biases that we know about and biases we don't know about. And those things, unfortunately, are reflected in the training data. And so the question is, knowing that, how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so 100% accurate. There are biases in pretty much every single model that's out there, which is why it is really critically important to choose the use cases that you're directly applying to the model wisely. the biases have a milder impact on some use cases than other. Like for example, if I was going to give you a high stakes assessment score based on a large language model, that is biased, is probably not a good idea. The way we combat it is by fine-tuning the models based on multiple subgroups, continuously monitor those subgroup analyses, make sure that we are trying to eradicate as much of the data bias that we can. The other aspect of it is when you use these large language models within a use case, sometimes it gets exacerbated by the design of the product itself. So, ensuring that you have diverse enough teams, that you have user research across a wide variety of subgroups, that you build the product wisely and without as much bias as you can, really helps control any bias that the model itself generates. And then, even though we all, like Joseph mentioned, generative AI is how, most of us are thinking about AI, that's not the end all and be all of AI. There are lots of fantastic groups, open source as well as other groups that have created AI models that are based on smaller subsets of data that are truly unbiased as much as they could be. And in a lot of the use cases, maybe it's a wiser idea to go with those smaller, fine-tuned models than to just apply a large language model.
And the only thing I would add, and I regret that I didn't mention, my answer of what makes this different than other technologies, because my tagline for technology is an accelerator. It's neutral, but large language models are not neutral. They are biased. That is the difference between this technology and other technologies that we're used to. And so the thing I might add is, just as we have had to learn that none of your news comes without bias, none of it, none of your generative AI is going to come without bias. And so we have to prepare our students as digital citizens to anticipate the bias that's in the system. We'll work as hard as we can to get it out, but in the end, that needs to be part of what they learn.
Yeah, I agree with both of those things, of thinking about students and how it gets back to the point we were making earlier about understanding how these work and what's under the hood as they understand what they're doing. And then on the work as hard as we can to get it out, much of what we have done with Conmigo is around prompt engineering. And there are things where we have used our content principles around science-based answers and some of those kinds of things to direct the model to certain kinds of responses. And we do what's called red teaming, which is where we all get together and try to break the model and find its biases and be able then to work through them. But none of that's 100%, which is why we need the other piece about teaching students what's happening and how to spot biases.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, as students understand more about about how AI works and how these models are trained and how machine learning works, how deep learning works, and how even like classical AI works, they're better able to make decisions about how to use AI because they understand the technical limitations and thus will hopefully understand the societal implications as well. That's the theory. We are running out of time, so we're going to go to a lightning round. You have a room, my colleagues here. I'm talking to them, but I'm talking about you all. You all are a room full of very influential people in your little spheres, whether that sphere is the entire country of Belize or Kosovo or just a small county like Clark County. It's not a small county. Or a school or a smaller district, a rural district, whatever, a national organization like CS for All or a more regional organization. You're all very influential people. What would you all like them to think, feel, or do per AI in education moving forward? This is last words.
I think so much of the public conversation about AI in education is around things like cheating and how we're going to stop plagiarism, and a lot of the potential things that we absolutely need to address. But I think we also need to be thinking about the positive uses and the potential use cases, and how this might be, to Joseph's point, different than the technology that's come before.
Thank you, Kristen.
Engage. The more you engage, the more you have conversations, the more you put forward your use cases, the biases you are seeing, the better we can develop AI.
Create a sense of urgency around schools really taking this seriously. Every learner deserves to know how the technology works that's influencing every decision that they make in their lives. Every digital interaction they have is influenced by artificial intelligence. They must know how that works. We owe it to them to know what this invisible technology is. We need to make that visible to them. And if for no other reason than that, AI needs to be part of our schooling.
And I'd like to end with a practical thing that you already have in your Padfolio, that mini guide to the AI Guidance for Schools Toolkit. You know, the steering committee, the advisory committee out there for TeachAI worked very hard to push this out early so that schools have guidance even this year and are not waiting yet for another school year to potentially think about guidance around AI. Now, guidance is never going to be definitive, but this is a great place to start. So I'd just like you all to just consider if within your sphere of influence, you are supposed to provide guidance on AI, whether at the state level, the district level, the country level. Just take a look at the toolkit. We created it practically, for practical usage. Please take a look at it. We hope that whatever you do with it, we just hope it leads to what Joseph ended with, which is really helping your schools, your classrooms, take this situation seriously and really use it for good. I want to thank my colleagues. Thank you for being here. They're going to be here the rest of the day at least, so please look for them in the hallways and say hi to them. Thank you.